for one, love to come to Canada because I am knee-deep in the struggles of the United States. If you think you have it bad, come visit me. In my time with you, first of all, how many of you are teachers or were teachers? Okay, all right, what I want to do, so those of you who are, and parents, okay, all right, I have to know who I'm talking to, right? What I want to do is I want to frame my remarks for the quest for teachers becoming real professionals. And I think in Canada, at least I've worked a lot in Toronto, so I know the people in Toronto. I think that quest is doing well, but I'm talking really from the US perspective. So I want you to know sort of what's actually happening there. But I want to frame my remarks really about the nature of the struggle to change things. And when I say struggle, I don't mean bad, because the struggle to change is in fact enveloping all of us. So first I want to just give you a quickie frame, which hopefully will be useful. And that is, most schools, maybe not yours, but certainly most schools in the US are bureaucratically run. And most of the changes are changes toward being more professional. Now, it's important to understand. So what do we mean by bureaucratically run? The quest for standardization, mandates, prescribed routines, compliance. Teachers learn to be private for protection, and top-down leadership. Now, those don't necessarily, they're not bad. Some of them work quite well. However, most of the changes that are coming toward teaching everywhere in the world have much more of a professional orientation. And the professional orientation is collaborative, the idea of making teaching more public rather than private, taking collective responsibility, mutual accountability for the kinds of things that go on, shared leadership, particularly in the other places of the world, and even in the States, huge numbers of teacher leaders, and a growing appreciation that you can learn from your peers. Now, when I say struggle, I mean that when the professional orientation bumps up against the bureaucratic orientation, you can expect conflict and tension. So to make this real, since I am one of the people who, although I'm a professor, I was a teacher a long time ago. If I tell you how, you'll spend all the time trying to figure out how old I am. And I'll tell you if you want to. I was a teacher more than 50 years ago. And elementary teacher, I had 46 students in the 6th grade. There were so many bodies in that room that we could barely turn around. And it was because it was a new school, and the new school would get loaded with students. And that was my first year of teaching. I also have 3 grown daughters and 5 grandchildren. And I knew, but when I was teaching, I knew that there was so much that I was learning, even with those 46 kids. But nobody cared. People would come to my classroom, researchers from all kinds of universities, we want to study this. And, and all I could think of was, what about the knowledge that I was producing as I was actually teaching every single day? So I vowed that whatever I did, I was going to work toward the development of teacher knowledge, what it is that teachers grow, principal knowledge, what it is that principals learn when they become a principal, not the leadership classes that they take. And school knowledge. How do school cultures actually learn and make it possible for other people? For me, this was sort of the basis of what change was about. And I am so old that the people who are creating the literature around the process of change were all men. And I lucked out because I was a teacher and I knew schools and I continued to get a degree. They let me in. And they let me in because they were trying to make all kinds of rules about schools, but they didn't know anything about schools. So what I want to do is I want to give you 3 examples to make this real. And remember the bureaucratic and professional clash. And remember, we're now everybody's dealing with the process of change. So I want to give you 3 examples that I'm working with today. These are real examples. And they're all involved in somehow this clash. In some cases, incredibly easy, and in some cases, incredibly hard. But all, in some ways, making progress, which will give us a chance to think of ourselves, really, as fighters for a lot of the things that I think people have been talking about here. And all of these things really are dealing with a huge problem that we seem to have had forever. And that is the difference between the policies that get created, often from people at the top, and the practices that people actually work on at the bottom. And then there's the research community who comes in and tries to understand what's going on. Okay, the first one is Finland. I flew here yesterday from Helsinki. So I'm fresh off a week in Finland. And I've got to tell you about it. I actually created a project in Finland, even though they're #1 on the PISA scores, because I got involved with a wonderful woman who came to Stanford, who I was introduced to, and she said she wanted to come to Stanford. She's a teacher educator, and she's one of the main people who helped create the teacher education program for teachers in Finland, and why they're #1. Humble, marvelous human being. She said she wanted to come to Stanford, for longer, so she could actually, go around and learn some more things and bring them back to Finland. But she was very concerned because she wanted her husband to come with her. And I said, so what's the problem? And she said, well, my husband is a tennis player, and I want him, we don't know anybody here. And I said, well, you've talked to the right person. I've been playing tennis since I was 9 years old. I'll fix up your husband. So that's how I got to know her. Okay, and in the source of our conversation, I said, everybody knows that in Finland, teachers get a master's degree. They're there's a lot of caution about who comes in. You have to like kids, you have to be good with adults, you have to really have passion for teaching, and there are a number of other things. And I said to her, well, look, once they get a master's degree, does anybody help them in their first year of teaching? And she kind of got red in the face, and she said, well, like what? And I said, well, in the United States, I live in California, and in California we have a law that new teachers for the first year get mentors who help them with their teaching. Boy, I would have loved one. Let me tell you, with 46 kids, I'm not even sure a mentor could have helped me because there were too many bodies. And so I actually helped create a collaboration between Finland and the New Teacher Center, which happens to be in Santa Cruz, and where they have a wonderful, a teacher became she was a bilingual teacher, and the UC Santa Cruz used to go to her class all the time. They invited her to come to the university without a doctorate, and she organized, eventually, this incredible mentoring program that is now actually nationwide, and it's now in Scotland, and it's now in Finland. And so this was an example of, the best example I've ever seen, of how the policies, here's somebody who started this mentoring program. She raised money, brought 15 Finnish teachers to Santa Cruz, California. They almost went crazy in Santa Cruz, because I don't know if you know anything about Finland, but right now it is dark, raining, and freezing. And Santa Cruz to them was like heaven. They thought they had gone to paradise, not about mentoring. Anyway, they came to Santa Cruz and shadowed 15 mentors and went back to Finland to actually begin a mentoring program. So I was there last week with somebody from Santa Cruz to actually see how they're doing and to encourage them. Now, what they are going to do is now try to produce some research that will both have the research and the practice, and then go to the policy people and say, look, we need this as a mentoring program. And it is quite incredible, although teachers are very professional there. They have no standardized tests. They have no tests when you get out of high school. Free lunch for everybody. Teachers don't teach half as much as I did, or even as those of you who are teaching now do. Each school is autonomous in the sense that they can work out the large national goals, which are very big, on their own. Many, many teachers get PhDs, not to leave teaching, but to stay in teaching. So it's an extraordinary example of the connections between policies that support practices. Okay, so now the trouble spot. I'm also involved in an incredible collaboration between 4 of us in California in our center, where one of the things going on in the United States is two big, there are many big ideas, but the 2 big ideas I'm involved in. One of them is there's a tremendous press for teacher accountability. And if Andy was here, he would say, this isn't the kind of accountability we want. But one other form of accountability in many states is that teachers get a certain percentage. Most of it is about standardized tests of your students, but some of it is about teachers' involvement in some other part that might be considered evaluation. And one of those moves is to deal with performance assessment, where teachers are involved in helping create the assessment that will be used with what they are teaching, what students learn, and an opportunity to teach, again, kids stuff that teachers don't learn. And it's actually a very exciting thing where teachers are involved in improving their teaching as they are in fact improving the learning of their students. So we decided, but one of the odd things that's going on in the States is that for some reason higher education is not involved in this teacher accountability movement. They're heavily involved in doing research, I'm sure, but they have not been involved. So we got this idea at Stanford to write a proposal to involve Teachers College, which is where I was for 25 years of my life, and have a collaboration between us and Teachers College and the Department of Education and the Teachers Union. So it's a 4-way collaboration. Well, right now I can tell you, you must be nuts to do this kind of collaboration, but it is also incredibly exciting, and we are learning a great deal. We're working on the 20% of the teacher evaluation that can be performance-based with teacher involvement in both the process and the practice. And so the state policy is pretty clear that 20% can be owned by the teachers. But here's what I want to tell you that is going on really in this collaboration. Okay, I have never spoken about this before. I'll kill any of you who speaks about this after I leave, because this is seriously top secret, okay? First, we had to work out the collaboration between the Stanford professors and the Teachers College professors. One of the professors, this is mean-spirited, but don't tell. One of the professors wrote a note, she was a little miffed about something, and she sent an email saying, I don't think those of you who are at Stanford know that I am the so-and-so professor of the year, or something like that. Trying to show her credentials. We finally got over that. We clearly are collaborating with our people in New York. However, and we're very friendly with the teachers union. I worked with the unionists for years. I called them up and I said, look, I want you to know we are friends. We're not going to use this for evaluation until you get it and until you own it. So who's the problem? The people who are in the district creating the schools. And here's where the bureaucratic professional stuff comes in. They want to both control what's going on. They're nice people, but all they know about is control, and they want to standardize everything. Those of us in the university and the union want to create an atmosphere where people can learn this year, and we all want to collaborate in the kinds of decisions that get made. And so what is happening is we are having an incredibly interesting push and pull. This might be successful, I don't know, between the controllers and the people who want to collaborate. Literally between the bureaucratic mindset, which is to quickly standardize something so you can grab it, and those of us who want to make the change, who want to have a collaborative environment. And right now, we are sort of at stasis, I would say. Not unfriendly, but still fighting to have serious collaboration. Hence the problem. The bureaucrats only know one way of behaving, and we have learned another way of behaving. And so again, so far we have an incredible lack of understanding of how to, they don't know how to involve other people because there's so much involved in making decisions that standardize. They even have two researchers who are statisticians, and they're trying to somehow get enough stuff so that they can get the same thing going on in every school. You can imagine the conversation. One high school principal said, look, the students in my school are making advances, but they come from high poverty environments. We even have 100 kids who live in cars and are homeless. And are we going to be compared to Stuyvesant High School, where the smartest kids in New York are going to be there? And so we're also fighting, excuse me, the statistical researchers and trying to get them to describe what is happening, not necessarily by numbers, but by, in fact, the quality of what goes on. Now, this is a real situation. Invite me next year and I'll let you know what happens. Okay, my third example, Nina, where are you? How am I doing on time? 5 more minutes, okay. My third example is the Teacher Learning and Leadership Program, where we even have, how many of you know about this in Toronto? Lynn, a few of you? Okay. I was invited 5 years ago to give the keynote speech for the Teacher Learning and Leadership Program, which is in Toronto. And what had happened is that in 2004, the Minister of Education announced that she wanted teachers to be professionals in Toronto, and that she invited the teachers' union to talk and have a working group where they could work together to create professional development that teachers felt was useful for them. They worked for 2 years to create this program, and I was invited to be the keynote speaker. There it was, the policy people and the people who were doing the practice, who in fact finally agreed on a program. And the program, for some of you is, who don't know it, is teachers write a very small proposal to do professional development in their own school. They strongly suggest you work with another teacher or a team and do the research. Okay, we are now doing a small study, very small, trying to understand how the teachers experience the Teacher Learning and Leadership Program, the kinds of supports that teachers feel they need, the experiences they're having, and the outcomes as well as the challenges. And I have to tell you, again, just in this room, okay, we're still in the middle of a study, and we have found incredible themes. We have found unbelievable enthusiasm on the part of teachers. Teachers feel like some of them have done professional development on how to engage the community outside that have been strangers, have done incredible work, as well as all the literacy, math, all of those things. Some of them have dealt with interdisciplinary work from the inside rather than coming from the outside. Look for next year when we create all the themes that you will see. Again, an incredibly interesting and important example. When I still give the keynote speech, and when I go there, I sit at the table with the ministry and the union, and I cannot tell who's minister and who's union because the collaboration is so good. Of research, policy, and practice. This is just a sort of a tiny look at the complexity and the conundrums in 3 different cultures. Some of us, I think, are hybrids: parents, teachers, researchers, policymakers, grandparents. Maybe some of us are the people who build the bridges that Mark talked about this morning, or the workers of positive universalism that Uzma spoke about, or the independence that Harrod talked about, or Andy's local community investment, or Charles talking about investing deeply in the people themselves. But no matter what your role, I fight for hybrids because I'm obviously one, but some of us commit ourselves no matter what our role, and are fighters for social justice, forward-looking thinking, unafraid to fail because it's inevitable, continuously excited about our work. Andy Hargreaves, who I've also known for about 30 years, always characterized he and I as having 2 sides of the coin. He was the critic, and I'm the one who has the positive view of change and progress. He's not here to hear this, but I accept my role. Thank you very much.